The second story that aired for us this week in USA Today and ABC World News was on work and income for women in the 45 to 54 age bracket. We've been able to compile a number of statistics that are very interesting in some of the discrepancies that we see. For instance, in some of the data that I have here, among women 45 to 55, there's a higher proportion of widowed, divorced, and separated and single women that fall into the lower income brackets. So certainly we see very statistically that if a woman is married, they actually tend to be in a higher income bracket, and the other classifications tend to fall more towards women in the lower income brackets. Another statistic that we've seen that we think is very interesting is that in terms of women in the workforce, there are fewer women age 45 to 55 that are employed full-time or self-employed than there are men. A higher proportion of women in this age group are not in the workforce compared to men, and that is in and of itself interesting. One of the things that is kind of interesting is that unemployment is pretty equal among both men and women. There are more self-employed men than there are women, and from a full-time employment standpoint, slightly more men than women, but it is equaled out considerably over time. Other factors that we're looking at in terms of occupation, women with low household income are most likely to work in jobs requiring manual labor, sales, or service. And the proportion of women working as business leaders and entrepreneurs increases as income level increases. So certainly back to economics. We found in so many of our studies that economics drives so much, even down to correlation with obesity. So we're certainly seeing that to be the case as it pertains to women and being in more higher level positions. Looking at work environment in particular, there's some interesting trends that we've seen there, particularly difference between men and women. And actually, it's pretty much the same for all men and women as it is in the 45 to 54 age bracket. Although men and women are pretty equally satisfied with their jobs, men actually report having a better work environment than do women. Women seem to struggle more than men with acceptance of their work environment or feeling good about their work environment. Actually, when we drill down in that data, this is largely driven by a stronger tendency for men to report a better relationship with their manager and an open and trusting work environment than women report. Although more men report having a positive and healthy work environment than women, more women report that they can use their strengths and do what they do best at work. This is one of the 4 areas that we focus on when we look at the work environment, so that's very important. Being able to use your strengths and leverage your strengths really is something that can add enjoyment to your work, and so it's important that women in that age group and across all women actually have had good success in that area. Both men and women in that 45 to 54 age bracket report the lowest perceptions of an open and trusting work environment compared to other age groups. So for whatever reason, that particular age band is the one of most significant concern. This is all interesting data, but I guess one of the questions that it always leads us to is, so what do you do about it? Well, clearly we're finding much more importance in working with work cultures. If you can improve the cultures and improve the leadership, it puts people in a position where they can be more effective. We find that when people have trusting relationships with their supervisors, things always go better. If they can use their strengths, things go better. If they get compliments from workers and supervisors, that's important. So improving the work environment is valuable. But we also know sometimes it comes down to the individual and the work that they need to do in order to make sure that they're prepared for work correctly, that they have the right attitude when they approach work, so that they can make the most of any work environment that they need to. With that in mind, there are some barriers in the workplace for women, and we've seen that more women actually experience barriers such as personal problems and worries, more problems with their finances. They're more responsible for caregiving for often elderly relatives, and they have less or not as good a physical and mental health reported in this group. So compared to men, these barriers are still problematic. Obviously, it's an area of important focus as we work with women in this age bracket in the future.